Thanks for watching or listening. If you need someone to talk to about your mental health or you're looking for resources, please DM us at Everyman Patros. You're not in this alone. We love to help. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Patros Podcast. We're embracing healthy masculinity, and part of embracing healthy masculinity is mental health. And so this month, we are going to be highlighting men's mental health. And so to kick that off, we have a special guest that's going to be our first person highlighting mental health. And who is he, Jeff?
Yeah, excited to have Johnny Crowder on the show. Johnny, you have a lot of different titles, which we'll get into. But before we do that, if you're just stumbling on the Patros Podcast, Patros is Greek for father. And it really is this concept of someone who is a wise, kind of the wise guy in the tribe, but not Italian. Well, he might be Italian, but he's not a soprano, but he's that wise guy of the tribe who has been around. He's got a lot of wisdom. He's passing it on to the next generation. He's well respected in his community. He sees the needs, and just like really the man that we ascribe to be as followers of Christ. And so we wanted to spend this month talking about mental health. And in particular, Johnny, we wanted to start with you. I think you got a unique story, and I'm excited to hear it. I'm excited for our listeners to hear it. But just a couple of the topics that we're going to be talking about today, and just answers that we have. The stigma around men's mental health and what that's all about, why it's important, some kind of like toolkit, some practical things that we can take away. Like, hey, how do we deal with this? What are some tools that you can give us? And then I think really like for Christians, and I'll let you speak to it, but for so long, mental health has been, just stigmatized. And I know you know it well. And especially, I remember early on in our marriage, and in fact, it's kind of a precursor in some ways, a prophecy, but early on in our marriage, we were attending a church, and the pastor from the stage said, you don't need medication. You just need the Holy Spirit.
You just need meditation.
Yeah.
It had to rhyme. If it's if it's coming from the pulpit and it's a cool pastor, if it doesn't rhyme, it's not scriptural.
Yeah. There were definitely 3 points of alliteration at that point. Yep. That's for sure. But I remember that turned my wife off so much. And, but I think that's a lot of people. Now, I think we've come a long way since that was 20 some years ago, but that has stuck with me. That memory has stuck with me. Yeah. So I think, man, we'd just love to hear who Johnny Crowder is.
Yeah, I guess introduce yourself to our audience first, and then we could dive into some questions.
Yeah, this is I always call this the 30 years and 30 seconds question, because it's like, how do I sum up everything?
And you got quite the life.
Yeah, I'll say this is like the very high level. So if people are wondering, like, why should I even listen to this episode? Great question. I love the discernment. Like, keep it up. I would say, I grew up with severe mental illness in an abusive environment, and I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I was in denial. I really judged myself for it. I went to treatment in high school, not because I wanted to, but because I was voluntold that I needed to go to treatment. And went to school for psychology, and then started working in the behavioral health field, earned some credentials there. And then I've been working full time in the behavioral health field ever since. So I started speaking at conferences and events about my own lived experience with mental health conditions maybe 14 years ago. So now I travel regularly and speak at conferences and fundraisers like all over the country and out of the country, which is cool. That's awesome. And then I also run a mental health organization called Cope Notes. So we provide daily mental health support via text message for youth and adults all over the world. And then I'm also in a metal band, and you guessed it, I write the lyrics and they're about mental health. So pretty much my whole life is like, I always say, the famous Tupac quote, I didn't choose the thug life chose me. I did not choose to work in mental health. I feel like because I was so unwell and it consumed so much of my life, that became a passion. I mean, isn't that what happened with Paul, right? He loved killing Christians. And then once he caught the fire, he went in the other direction. That was Paul, right? Yeah. So as unwell as I was before, let's say I was negative 75 points wellness, I went
Mhm.
full 75 points in the other direction, where like so much of my time and energy is spent on keeping myself healthy and then helping others do the same.
That's good. Yeah, it's like God's ability to redeem misguided zeal. So
Hmm.
anytime that, as broken as something is how healthy he can make it.
Dude, that's
So
why I get hope when I meet people who are like, man, I'm never going to be sober. And I'm like,
Mm.
dude, I actually like that intensity, because like when you do get sober, you're going to be so good at being sober.
Yeah.
You'll be the champion of telling
Yes.
people how to get sober. So, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about Cope Notes? I saw, is it you had 4 million interactions of helping people throughout the day?
Yeah, we just hit 4.5 million interventions delivered.
Interventions, that's what you got.
So
Okay.
what we do is we send randomly timed text messages that interrupt negative thought patterns
Hmm.
with health education content, like a psychology fact or journaling prompt and exercise that's written by a real peer with lived experience. So this is not ChatGPT. This is not copy and paste from Wikipedia. This is like written from real people who understand what you're going through. And over time, these random little 10-second interventions are proven to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. And then if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, I don't ever experience stress, anxiety, and depression. First of all, you're lying. Like, who's that for? And second of all, even if you actually don't experience those things, it's also proven to increase emotional intelligence, which we know is a big misunderstood component of masculinity altogether. Focus, coping skills. So it's the type of thing where for only 10 seconds a day, you're improving your mental health without like a big lift.
Wow. And that's even like, it's not just for people who would admittedly struggle, but this is, everybody should be accessing something like this.
Correct. It's the same. I tell people like, sometimes I'll speak at schools. Mostly I speak for adults, but sometimes I'll go speak for a school district and I'm talking to kids.
Yeah.
And someone will be like, oh, I don't really deal with any of that stuff. And I say, you know what? That's why I don't brush my teeth. And all the kids are like, what? And I go, well, I don't have any cavities. So like, what do I need a toothbrush for? And all the kids crack up and they're like, you're supposed to brush your teeth. And it's the same with mental health. Like if somebody hits me with oh, I don't need that stuff. It's like, you can still take good care. If you're not in get healthy mode, which is where I spent a lot of my childhood. Like I wasn't healthy. I needed to get healthy. Yeah. If you're not in that mode, you are in stay healthy mode, which means you need to take care of and maintain your mental health so that you don't slip.
That's so good.
That's really good. I have a zillion questions, but I want to start with the Cope Notes, because that, from what I was reading, was, I mean, you kind of didn't even know what you were getting into, really.
Nope.
You just kind of wanted to do some good, and then it just turned into this thing. Can you just talk to us about that journey? Like what prompted it, and then how did it grow?
Yeah, I'm very transparent. I think there's this weird narrative around CEOs, especially in technology, where they're like these sort of like superhuman celebrity savants, where it's like, oh, they're just these geniuses. And that's just, I'm very transparent. Like that was not my experience. My experience was, I was learning about something called ecological momentary intervention in school, EMI. And the idea is that if you if you take these like clinical learnings, something you might learn in therapy, and you break it up into bite-sized pieces and deliver it in non-clinical settings. So like when you're at school, when you're at home, when you're at work, it actually trains the brain to form new neural pathways associated with coping skills and resilience. So I was like, wait a second. Originally, it was used primarily for smoking cessation and PTSD. And I was like, what if we could use it for like anxiety and stress and depression? Like I want to build something that does that. And originally that thing that I built, quote unquote, if you're not seeing the video, I'm literally putting air quotes, because the thing that I quote unquote built was me texting people from my own phone. So I didn't build anything. I was just texting people unsolicited health education content. These were like journaling prompts and psychology facts and like perspective shifting, like encouragement. And people would just be like, how did you know I needed to hear that? And I'm like, I didn't know anything. Like I just randomly texted you this. And I think it's been fascinating to see how many people have said, oh, the right message at the right time made the biggest difference. Like you got to think, if we're sending millions of messages, and we built a scheduler to send all of these, because now we're not sending them manually anymore, but we're still writing them manually. So it's still written by real people, but sent by a robot. And I'm telling you, the amount of times that someone has either said the right text at the right time changed or saved my life, or the right text at the right time saved or changed my marriage, or got me sober, or made me book my first therapist appointment, or kept me from ending my own life, or, you know, made me call an Uber instead of driving home when I was at the bar. Like, so many things that, like, real tangible change in people's lives. And my favorite thing that I hear isn't the right text at the right time thing, because it's not always like that. Sometimes my favorite thing to hear is someone saying, I got rear-ended, and instead of yelling at the guy and getting angry, I remembered a Cope Notes text that I got like 4 months ago about how to control my anger when I feel it rising up in me. So it wasn't the right text at the right time. It was the right text 4 months too early. I love that.
Yeah.
So is everybody getting the same text at the same time, or is it curated depending on like what they have said they struggle with?
So originally it was one text for the whole list.
For sure.
Like if we're texting 10,000 people today, they all get the same text at the same time. Now, no two people ever get the same text message at the same time.
No way.
So you got to think, like, when this intervention shows up on your phone, your first thought is, of all the people in the world, of all of the messages I could have received, of all of the days and times, I'm the only person in the universe to receive this intervention at this time. Like, why me? Why now? How can I apply this to my life? Like, that is so much more powerful than I open my phone and I'm in a room with you and I'm like, well, both of them also got it. So like, it wasn't for me. No, it was for you.
Wow. I mean, I'd love to hear the spiritual kind of like interaction with this, because obviously you're talking something that's behavioral science. There's, you know, a lot of other literature has nothing to do with spirituality or the Bible or anything. But for you, I'm sure, you know, that's not how it works. How do those two meld? How do those two worlds mesh for you?
Dude, science is the how of faith. That's always the way that I've understood science. It's like, you know, if someone's like, oh, God's going to heal my broken ankle. It's like, yeah, with a freaking cast. Like, and a doctor, and like he's gonna heal you, and he's gonna use science. So anytime I look at, like, it's so strange to see how and I know a lot of Christians won't align with me on this, and that's okay, but I do not see science and faith at odds. I see science as like helping us contextualize who we know God to be and the genius behind the design. So I'm a big science person. I love learning about like I think science is basically, you ever watch I'm going to get nerdy for a second. I really like cars. I'm like a big car nerd, and I will not only will I watch a Top Gear video where they just talk about one car for a half hour, or Jay Leno's Garage, he'll talk about one car for like 45 minutes and I'm sitting there learning about it. I will also watch interviews with the designers where they're like, yeah, we knew we had to design this roof scoop in this exact way so that the air flow could funnel because it's rear engine, and we knew that. And I'm listening to how they built this, and I'm like, you guys are 100 times smarter than I ever realized. And to me, that's what science is for faith. It's like understanding the complexity of God's design. So when I approach Cope Notes, it's built on neuroscience. I studied abnormal psychology and neuroscience in school. So I'm studying like neuroplasticity, how and why the brain changes physically, the way that your synapses interact with each other when you think thoughts. And all I'm thinking is like, no freaking way. There's no way that this is, it's like truly the most, I'm hard pressed to find a more interesting subject than science, specifically because it helps us understand God's design.
That's so good. As far as, like when it comes to, you have Cope Notes, then you have music. And so you have like so many different things going on. And I think that reconciling everything that you have going on is very unique. I'm sure people always are wondering, like, how do you do all of it? And even how do you function in a space like a creative space, which is typically extremely emotional, extremely volatile, managing the things that you've been diagnosed with, and then also managing a company. How are you doing that, and how do you maintain your mental health?
Dude, my three main focuses right now professionally are running Cope Notes, singing in a band, and writing the music, and then speaking at conferences. So
Okay.
I travel to speak a ton. I'm speaking maybe 30 or 40 times a year, maybe more. So I'm like always on a plane in another city doing public advocacy. The only way that I can tie all these three things together is because they have the through line of mental health. So like
Wow.
they're all vehicles for advocacy. And my life mission statement is I want to make stuff that helps people feel better. That's it. So like if I'm making something, whether it's a company or a text message or a song or, you know, a keynote or whatever, I want to make something. I want it to help people. So I want it to be for some greater good. And I want people to feel better because they interacted with it. Those are like my big three. So
That's good.
I could start writing a book tomorrow, Allan, and it would fit underneath that. The only time that I would feel too stretched is if I was like, I want to start like a jet ski flipping side hustle. And it's like, okay, now this does not fit into my, like, recovery is my full-time job. So I am keeping myself mentally and emotionally healthy. That is my primary responsibility to myself and the people around me. All of my work falls underneath that. So it all feels like different parts of the same job, the same way that if you were to work at a bakery, for example, sometimes you'd be making cakes, sometimes you would be making scones, sometimes you're shopping at the grocery store for ingredients. They all look like different things, but they're part of the same job, you know? And I view all of my work as part of my recovery.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I like the bakery analogy, and it's a good word too for anybody running a company or anyone thinking about running a company or any kind of, like, I guess like not habit but pastime, or you know, something that you're doing, like you like stay in your wheelhouse and you know, and
Like
then
have a mission. Yeah.
then you don't get off because there's so many things to distract us and take us from the things that God has called us to do. And so I like that bakery analogy. Can we delve in a little bit too? You talked about the recovery, you know, just a little bit of your story. You know, you said growing up, that's kind of where this all came and bubbled to the surface. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, and I wasn't around the best people. So I didn't have great examples of what masculinity looked like. I didn't have great examples of people controlling their temper, people being respectful and kind to other people. I didn't have great examples of just mentally and emotionally healthy people and relationships. And I think I became aware at a young age. Like I decided I've never used drugs or alcohol one time in my whole life. And that's because I grew up around people who did, and I saw how that affected them. And I made a decision when I was like 11, that I might have been even younger, that I would never touch drugs or alcohol. So at a very young age, I knew what I'm witnessing is dysfunctional. I don't know how, but I know that I don't want my life to look like this. So I think even when I was going through my own mental and emotional health challenges, I had this awareness that I was like, what I'm experiencing can't be the regular human existence, because all these other people, not to be morbid, but like way more people would be self-harming and dying by their own hand if a ton of other people felt like me. So I was like, something about what I'm experiencing, this can't be the normal childhood that everyone else is going through. I didn't know to what extent it was dysfunctional until I started going to treatment and learning, like, you know, like a lot of parents don't hit their kids. And I was like, what? You're kidding me. Like I thought I had accidentally normalized things that I knew were wrong to protect myself mentally. Because what's easier to digest as a kid? Is it that your parents love you and they just show it differently, or that they're dangerous people? Like, is it easier to digest that your friends are just the weird ones, Or is it easier to digest that like you need to stop hanging out with those people because they're a bad influence? Like,
That's good.
I knew that these things were not right, but I was so afraid of what that would mean if I acknowledged that, and then I had to change as a result, that I almost like unconsciously chose to be ignorant as long as possible until my behavior became so disruptive in my daily life that I had no choice but to attend treatment.
Yeah,
Oh,
there.
yeah,
Oh,
go
you
ahead.
got it. Oh, you good?
No, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, I'm just thinking about, so that's your background. You're coming from that, and then you now somehow get to this healthy place. So I'd like to hear, like, what did that look like? How did you get to health? And then the other question I think is really important to answer, just for listeners, is like, how would you define like a healthy masculinity in terms of mental health? Like what is that definition to you? Or maybe there's some characteristics, because I think a lot of guys think that maybe they're doing okay, or they're like you, or they're creating excuses in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
or like, justifications for why they're thinking a certain way, when actually you're like, no, dude, that's actually not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a space to be in. So I'd love to kind of riff on that a little bit.
I think I've generally prided myself on being honest. Like growing up, my parents made a lot of mistakes, but one thing they did right was they told all of my siblings, Crowders don't lie, cheat, or steal. That was like our motto. If you go to any of my siblings and you go, Crowders don't, they say lie, cheat, or steal.
Lie,
Like
cheat,
we
or
all
steal.
know it. And I have always said my whole life, when I meet somebody, like, as long as I know you, I can't guarantee you everything, but I can guarantee you I will never lie to you. I will never cheat you. I will never steal from you. And I take pride in that. However, I have realized that I have lied to myself about so many parts of my life to make myself feel better. I've been in abusive relationships. Like people were abusive towards me in a relationship, and I've lied to myself and said, that's not abuse. I must have misinterpreted that. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too critical. Like, it is, in direct answer to your question, I think honesty is the missing ingredient. Honesty is the thing that is separating most men from their mental and emotional health peak, like their potential.
Wow.
It's not that we don't know that, I heard an interview with this private doctor. He's like, he gets paid like $1 million a year and is flown out to like do house calls for Jeff Bezos, right? Like he's like one of the top doctors, in like highest paid doctors or whatever, and they're interviewing him and they're like, what's your job like? And he's like, dude, I'm not gonna lie, it feels really stupid to have spent like 15 years in school to get on a plane and fly across the country and tell a full grown man to drink more water and like to not drink alcohol and like to exercise. This is basic stuff. And I think men, we do two main things that keep us from our mentally and emotionally healthy self. I mentioned one, which is we're not entirely honest with ourselves. We may be honest with other people, but we may not be honest with ourselves about I'm depressed, or I'm stressed, or I'm anxious. We don't like using those words. We kind of sugarcoat it. And an example of this is I've been going through, over the last 6 months, maybe the most difficult. Oh, see how I just did that?
You said
I said maybe the most difficult. When I tell you this story, you'll laugh at why I just caught myself there. Keep that in, by the way. Don't edit it out.
Okay.
I was at church. I was at worship a couple weeks ago, my friend's church, and I was on the floors, one of those churches where you can do this. I was like on the floor on my face crying, and a big bunch of tissues around me. And I was just like, God, this has been a 9.5 out of 10, one of the hardest seasons of my entire life. And I'm crying and crying. And then I stop myself and I go, no, this is a 10 out of 10. This is the hardest thing I've ever been through. And I felt like God went, thank you. Wow. I know it's 10. Who are you trying to convince that it's just not quite the hardest thing? And it's not, you're trying to be tough. And this is the other thing, that the first is honesty, but it's tied to stigma, specifically self-stigma. I haven't struggled a ton with what other people think about me. Like we talked about, you can look up on Wikipedia and read about all the stuff that I've been through. Like, I'm not scared of that. But what trips me up is sometimes I don't want to tell myself how hard what something I'm going through actually is, because I want to be tough for me. So I will, it's this match of like, it's the perfect blend. It's this terrible cocktail of slight dishonesty, because I want to discount how hard what it is I'm going through actually is. And I want to discount it because of my self-stigma, which is, oh no, what if this is the hardest thing?
Yeah.
What does that say about me? Am I even strong enough I should be strong. This isn't that hard. It's this toxic dance that I felt in that moment on my face during worship. I'm like, this is 10 out of 10. This is the hardest thing. And I felt God was like, brother, I knew that for the last 6 months. I knew that. It took you 6 whole months to admit to yourself. You're not fooling anybody.
Wow.
It felt so strangely freeing to finally, and I'm the guy who's like, I won't lie to anybody. Here I am telling God it's a 9.5.
Yeah. Well, and that's, so even with everything that you do, like I watched your TED Talk where you talked about, I think you said to the crowd, nobody walks around and asks The Rock Johnson, hey Dwayne, what was the one push-up that made you like jacked?
Yeah.
And everybody in America, we all want that one thing, or we want that, like, what was the one moment that made Johnny healthy? And really the reason I bring that up is talking about right now, like, you're an advocate for this. You've studied this, you've dedicated your life to mental health, yet thank you for being vulnerable. You've just recently, or are recently, going through the hardest time in your life.
Yeah, dude.
So yet would you still consider yourself healthy right now, but you're just going through something hard?
Yeah, the biggest difference is who you are. So there's this book called The Art of Happiness that I strongly recommend to anyone who's curious about first of all, I thought the title was so corny that my friend gifted this to me and I didn't read it for 8 years. I just like kept it from apartment to apartment. I never cracked it.
Wow.
And I finally opened it, and it's about the difference between your internal world and your external world.
Yep.
And how people with the exact same external world, like, dude, you ever go to the beach and you like see this family playing and having fun? They're building sandcastles. You see a family next to them arguing. Their same external world, the same one. But their internal world, you could see two people on a roller coaster. One person is having a nightmarish experience and one person is having the time of their life. So I think what's happening right now is my external world has been thrown into chaos, and it's been very difficult to navigate. But my focus, I have to continually, sort of like when you meditate, you have to call your mind back to like, no, I was totally ruminating or being anxious, and I have to call my mind back to like just be present. I think I'm having to do that with like, I'll go into fix it mode. I think this is I'm generalizing, but a predominantly male attribute is to like, something goes wrong, brother, I want to fix that. I want to control that external circumstance. You know, if I have a loved one who's unwell, I'm doing research about how to help them. I'm not a doctor, and I'm looking up, oh, you could try this, and maybe I'll take you to see this specialist. It's like
carnivore.
Dude, it's so hard for me to just accept the external world as being broken and invest in my internal world, my internal experience. So what I would rather have is a broken external world and a healthy internal world. Because a lot of times what we see is people who have, people who have the money, they have the beautiful wife, they have the happy kids who are getting good grades and they're getting honor roll, and they, all their health is great, and they have such a broken internal world, and they lack the peace that the gospel promises. And I'm so shook by how clear Jesus is about saying that there will be trouble. I'm like, boo, I don't like that verse. He's like literally telling us like the external world will be broken. And if you count on that to fix your internal world, you will perpetually be in that fix it mode, but you'll never actually benefit from the peace.
And so this is you continually building resilience, not that you are technically healed, but continually always healing. Is that like, how do you typically frame your experience?
Yeah, how I would say it succinctly is I am healthy now. I am
Yeah.
healthier than I was before, and I am going to be healthier a year from now than I am today. So it's like,
Good.
I think both things have to be true.
Mm-hmm.
If you sort of say, well, I'm on the mend, I'm on the mend, I'm on the mend, and you sort of prolong that narrative, it becomes part of your identity that you're not quite well, you're not quite well. So I'm happy to say I'm in recovery. I think that's true for forever. But sometimes I'll hear people say, I am an addict. And I think, identity wise,
yeah.
I personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of my organization. I'm saying
For sure.
personally, I think that if I use narratives like that, it ties me to this identity of like being broken. And I am very careful about the words that I use to describe how healthy I am now. And I believe myself to be very mentally and emotionally healthy now.
Yeah.
And even when things explode in my life and I can acknowledge like, wow, I feel depressed or I feel anxious. It's not me it's not I'm depressed. It's I'm experiencing the sensation of depression. And I think there's a difference. And for a lot of my life, I was depressed. Like that's who I was. Now it's something that I experience.
That's good.
Yeah, I love the framing of that. I had a pastor friend who would tell me, because you want to talk about you weren't a liar. Oh, that's all I was a liar. I mean, I'm gonna save my butt any chance I can. I'm gonna come up with the most elaborate thing, and I don't even believe it myself. But you say it enough, and then you start to believe it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happened. Like, bro, you are like not connected to reality whatsoever. But I had, once I got saved, I would say like, you know what, I'm a liar, and this is what I've been doing, and da da da. And I had a pastor say to me, he's like, no, you're not a liar anymore. You are no longer a liar. You are a saint who sometimes lies,
Yeah.
but that's no longer your identity. And it's just a flip of the phrase. But when you internalize it and when you actually mean it, you get the power in framing that up. And so I love what you're saying about, because I have struggled with that, even, with some 12-step programs and whatnot, about constantly being that thing. And I'm like, man, I just think that, when I read the scriptures, Jesus came to set us free. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't dabble. It doesn't mean that we won't sin. It doesn't mean that we won't mess up. He also said we live in a body of flesh, and sin lives in our flesh. And until Jesus comes back, we're going to be dealing with that. But I do think there's something healthy about framing it, like you were saying.
I think you sort of naturally behave in accordance with who you believe yourself to be. And unfortunately, I see this happen in relationships. This is a very common manifestation of this. If someone says, oh, I'm not lovable, or I don't love myself, or people don't love me, they behave in ways that almost make them undeserving of love, quote unquote, where they're like, oh, because it's like this, it's self-sabotage basically.
Yeah.
And if you operate like, if I think, well, I'm a healthy person, I'm going to make time for a workout, even if it's inconvenient, because I consider myself to be a healthy person. So what does a healthy person do? They make time to exercise. How does a healthy person shop? What time does a healthy person go to bed? How often does a healthy person raise their voice? So I look at myself as like, I try to invest a lot in my identity. Like, who do I know myself to be? And who do I want to be? And generally, every single fruit of the Spirit, I want to increase in my life. So if that's my true north, and I want to be more loving and more patient and more kind, more joyful, more generous, like all of these things, if I want these things to increase, what behaviors would I have to continually engage in for those things to become more accurate in me over time? I think, yes, you can use behavior to jumpstart identity, but I've tried to do the opposite. I've tried to be like, okay, who do I want to be? And then what would it take to become that person? I work backwards from the identity, Yeah,
well, that's like beginning with the end in mind, right? Like any kind of business goal or sports goal or athletic goal or family goal or music goal, you're going to go, what is the end thing that I want? And let me get there. But I don't think we do it with mental health. I don't think we do it with emotional health. And so it's interesting for you to frame it that way. we have a limited amount of time with you, and so I want to be respectful of that. Here in just the last few minutes, I think it's really, guys love practical tidbits. Well, I suppose women love it too. Just something practical that I can take with me, that I can kind of anchor, a thought or anchor a day. If you had to say, hey, here are my top three kind of, tips, or top three things, and maybe one of them is the identity, what would you say that is for men who, and I think it's more prevalent now that men are willing to say, you know what, yeah, maybe I do have an issue, but how can we cope? What are some mechanisms? What are some tools that could be helpful?
I'll keep these short and sweet. It's so funny how often people ask me for mental health advice, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but it is funny. I say, before you go any further with asking me, because I like went to school for psychology, so people are like, oh yeah, I want to know like the science, and I go, before you ask any further, do you drink alcohol?
Yep.
And if they say, yeah, I'm like, nothing I say is going to like, stop that. Yeah. You want to sleep better. You want to have better mood stability. You want to lose weight. Alcohol is a literal depressant, and it is classified as a poison, like in your body. It's processed as a poison. No amount of, you want to drink a smoothie and do yoga, brother, don't worry about any of that. Like the easiest thing you can do is cut alcohol out. So that's my number one go-to. If you don't believe me, look up any of the studies.
I feel that whole like Step Brothers scene where it's like, did we just become best friends? Bro, I've been telling my friends this nonstop lately.
It is the number one, like, most effective thing you can do. I've worked in this field for many years. I've never once heard someone, you know what I regret, Johnny? I wish I never gave up alcohol.
Yeah.
I've never once heard anybody say that. So that's my number one, is like, it's so easy. It saves you money. There's infinity benefits, and there's no real explanation. Like I don't have to explain to you why it's healthy, but that's number one. Number two, I strongly encourage people, if you do not have a playlist on your phone of songs that calm you down, there's a ton of science to support this also. Make one, even if it's just one song, having a go-to song and carrying headphones with you. I'm telling you, this has helped me go. I took anger management. I used to have a wild temper. Now I never raise my voice. I never slam a door. I don't insult people. And music was one of the most healthy and effective coping mechanisms for me. In 30 seconds of hearing music that makes you feel this way, it can literally physiologically change your state. So that's my number two, is like, have a go-to song, or I have a whole playlist, and carry headphones with you. And the third thing is, start a conversation. If you are in a relationship, start a conversation with your partner about this today. There is no reason that if you are married and you have a wife and you are not talking to her about your mental and emotional health, that is the lowest hanging fruit. No one wants you to win more than your wife, bro.
Yeah.
No one wants you happier and healthier and safer than your wife. If I was in a relationship, if I was married, the first person I'd want to be honest with is her. This person is with you so often. This person is so invested in your success as a man. Like, please do not say, well, I'll talk to my boys about it, or, well, no. Yeah. If you're in a relationship, please open up to your partner about this. And if you're not in a relationship, pick a friend or family member. It can just be one person. You don't have to like put your friends in a group chat and be like, hey, I have bipolar. You can do that if you want. But my recommendation is either start it with a partner or a friend or family member that you can trust, and have that person be in the know. Invite someone into the fold of your mental and emotional health state and journey. I am telling you, not being in a silo, not doing this in a vacuum, just having someone there, not just for accountability, but for support and community while you're going through it, even if they don't live with a diagnosis, that can often be the difference between this being the hardest thing you've ever done and the most fruitful thing you've ever done. Just inviting somebody in so you're not walking it alone.
So no alcohol. What was the second one? I forgot.
Music, baby.
Music, yeah.
Have a go-to song or playlist.
Song, and then
that calms you down. Like, calms you down. Does that, like, can it also hype you up? Like, is there a, or is it
my calm down playlist has death metal on it. It has hip hop. Okay. It has acoustic. It has worship. Like, any song that just, and people know what I'm talking about. If I say, what's that one song that when I put it on, your whole nervous system resets, and they're like, oh, it's like, sometimes it's some piano song, sometimes it's like Cannibal Corpse. And I'm like, dude, whatever does it for you, just have that song ready and have headphones with you.
So we got the song, we got the alcohol, and then we got just your spouse or partner or whomever. Like, and you're right, it's low hanging fruit. And I love how you frame that too. Like, no one wants you to win more than your spouse. I think sometimes we don't think that, or we forget it. That like our wives are for us.
Well, if we're losing, they're losing.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying. They're like, they are an equity owner in your health.
Yeah,
and
they benefit from our health.
Yes, they do. They do. Man, that's awesome. So tell us, if people want to connect with you, if they want to have you speak or whatever, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, JohnnyCrowder.com has almost everything you need. That's all the speaking stuff. CopeNotes.com, you can actually try Cope Notes for free or buy a subscription for a friend or family member, or we can serve your employees or school district or government or whoever. CopeNotes.com has all that info. And then if you're looking for some good gym jams, like something to pump you up in the gym, my band is called Prison. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all that stuff. We just put out a song called Splitting Black, and it has a bunch of songs underneath it on Spotify, so you can like check out some of that new stuff. And then on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, but on Instagram my @ is Johnny Crowder Loves You, because I do.
Awesome.
I love that. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of the Patros Podcast. I'm sure that you're going to love it, and I'm sure that you guys need to implement everything that Johnny talked to us about. Appreciate you, Johnny.
Thank you so much for having me, y'all.